Sometimes when you're driving down the road all by yourself, you begin to hear a voice that tells you need to look around, pay attention. Maybe something isn't quite right. That voice is me. It's the voice of Gord. G'day everybody. Welcome to a special emergency episode of Voice of Gord. I'm Gord. This is my voice. The other voice you're going to hear today is a young lady from Alberta by the name of Nikki Thom, who I've become acquainted with in doing my homework on what's happening with the four gentlemen in Coutts, who you've seen me write about in Newsweek and on my Substack. I've had Margaret McKay on this show, and I've appeared on Mr. Jason Levine's Rumble and YouTube channel discussing this issue, and I'm planning on doing more. And earlier today, I had a very lengthy and how shall I put this, disheartening conversation with Ms. Thom about the situation with the men in Coutts, and she's agreed to join us here and share information about the men's health issues, how they're not being addressed while they are in remand, how she's getting nowhere with Alberta Health Services, any MLAs or politicians, and the injustices against the Coutts for continue to pile up. Nikki Thom, welcome to Voice of Gord.
Thanks, Gord. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, thank you for joining. I never thought in my lifetime, Canada would have political prisoners, much less treat them nearly as badly as the Americans treated all the guys they rounded up and sent to Guantanamo Bay. But here we are.
Yeah, it's pretty sad and sickening what's happening in our country. And this used to happen, and well, this happens in third world countries, but now it's here.
Right. So I wanted to speak to you about the boys in general, and I've come to find out that much like Margaret McKay, you've sort of stepped into the breach as an advocate for the men, one of whom has been a friend of yours for a very long time. That would be Tony Olienick.
Yeah, Tony and I, we grew up together, went to school together. We both own trucking companies. And we've just talked business and been friends ever since. So, and this is we're both freedom loving people, so this has brought us together even more.
Right. And as I understand it, you all went to Coutts together to take part in the Freedom Convoy.
You bet. Tony and I had a conversation 3 days prior. He knew nothing about Coutts prior to our conversation. And I said, we're going to support freedom. And he says, I'm in. And so we all met at our shop at one morning on the January 29th, and we left from there and all headed to Coutts as a group. There was probably 30 or 40 of us that left our shop.
What immediately strikes me about this piece of information you've just shared, Tony and the others are charged with conspiracy to murder RCMP officers. Pretty serious stuff. But the man had no idea that there was anything happening 3 days before he even went there.
No idea. No idea until I phoned him and let him know what was going on.
Yeah, so the case continues to disintegrate further in front of our very eyes. Oh, man. So you all went to Coutts. Most of us know what happened. The Freedom Convoy went on, and the evening before the Emergencies Act was invoked, they arrested those guys. They arrested 9 other people too, if I'm not mistaken. There was 13 arrests in total, but 9 folks got released.
Yep.
Right, but not Tony, who's in remand. What facility is Tony being kept in right now?
The Medicine Hat remand facility.
Right, and from what I understand, you mentioned he's been held in solitary confinement for various periods, including one in excess of 40 days.
Yep, he said he keeps a diary every day, and he said he's going to tally it up, but he says it's guaranteed 40 days in solitary confinement.
Right, which is, by certain measures and certain organizations around the world considered a form of torture.
Yep.
And Tony has a particular health issue, which he's getting no assistance in treating while he's in this remand.
So Tony's got a condition called SIBO, small intestine bacterial overgrowth, which can make you very sick. You need a special diet. He has not been getting a special diet. He's been on a gluten-free diet before he was in there. They are not catering to his gluten-free diet. He's been asking, he was treated by a naturopath before with a healthy diet, Clydal Silver and a probiotic, which he became very healthy from being sick. He entered the remand facility and health problems. So when he was in Medicine Hat, he was given a prescription of a probiotic. He was then transferred. He had to pretrial, so he was transferred from Lethbridge to Calgary, back to Lethbridge, and denied his probiotic
at this other facility.
Yes.
And has been and that denial continues. He still hasn't had his probiotic at all.
So that denial continues. He has wrote in through Alberta Health Services request forms, asking why he was given a probiotic and then it was taken away. The remand facility said that it is not non-formulary in their wordage. So I spoke to his naturopath asking what would be formulary, and they said mag citrate would be formulary. So Tony wrote into Alberta Health Services being that mag citrate was formulary, and they denied that request also.
I'm going to zoom out a little bit here. We have this bill that Trudeau's trying to put through. Is it C-47 or C-48? They're basically trying to regulate natural health products, supplements, vitamins, very basic things you can get at any health food store and most grocery stores, and have them regulated like high-powered pharmaceuticals, as if the two things are the same, in an effort, to further punish people who would rather administer their own health instead of be slaves to the Canadian health uncare system, however you want to call it. But healthy people administering themselves and looking after their own health is not a population that's easily controlled or put in fear or scared of things. And the fact that they're denying a pretty basic supplement like magnesium citrate to Tony only tracks with what the feds are trying to do.
Yeah, and I have as I went to Alberta Health Services to get help from Nick. I was actually given a file number of 138185 for Tony. It was filed July 26th. I have since then sent Nick the information on mag citrate, that it is formulary. Tony has phoned Nick at AHS and had a discussion with him. He says, well, he'll try and move it up the ladder, but most times the request stands. So whatever the remand center says stands. So probably even with this request, he still won't get help either.
Well, that's really nice of them, isn't it?
And then
go ahead.
And then in the prisoners' rights and challenges, it talks about to go through the proper chain of command, to go fill out your forms with AHS. And if you can't get any help, it tells you can go to the Alberta Human Rights Applications and Remedies. So I phoned the Alberta Human Rights, and I was told that they do not deal with this issue, that it's a narrow scope of operations, and they don't deal with standard of care. It then says to go to the Ombudsman Complaints and Remedies. So I phoned the Alberta Ombudsman for a second remedy. They said I would have to get legal help, and they would not help me either.
It's funny. Human rights commissions have a very long and sordid history in Canada of causing trouble to people who are accused of being offensive. So the Human Rights Commission will lay waste in their pursuit of anyone who uses a naughty word or says something in the media some client group of the state doesn't like, but actually assist you when your human rights are being denied by the states with regards to your health. They'll do nothing. Why am I not surprised? You told me earlier that you have taken this like to Premier Smith's office and not got anywhere with them either.
Yep, I had phoned Danielle Smith's office, spoke to her secretary, Johnny, spoke to him for about 15 minutes.
We don't know if that's their actual name. They might just be using a pseudonym.
Spoke with him for about 15 minutes, told him about Tony's health conditions, told him he was being denied a probiotic, told him the symptoms that he was having, told him that he needed a better diet, that he was not getting a proper diet. Johnny then proceeded to say to me, I was unreliable, uncredible, and unbelievable. I asked him if going to the bathroom was not a human rights issue, because I said every human rights issue I'm having here is being violated. Basic
Well, yeah, because the IBS was basically causing Tony to not actually be able to go to pass a bowel movement
for 10 days, and I was told that was unbelievable. He said that would never happen, that AHS is very reputable, and if he needed help, he would be getting it.
Right, so that's like a very short version of the government investigating itself and finding it had done nothing wrong, but in like an answer to a phone call. Yeah, all very convenient. I understand yourself and Margaret and some other people in Alberta, and having raised this issue, are many folks are calling AHS and their MLAs, and this resulted in some threatening pushback to Mr. Olienick while he's at remand.
Yep. Tony was taken aside by one of the directors in the facility and said, this is causing us a big problem. Maybe I might be able to make a one-time exception for you, which that's to me is not acceptable. It should be let's make it for all. And then he was taken aside by a guard and saying, this better stop. And Tony had just said, well, if you do your job, I'm just asking for a simple probiotic. I just need some help because I am sick.
Yeah, I mean, I just took some major antibiotics. I had a tick bite and I didn't want to get Lyme disease, so I took a course of doxycycline, and antibiotics knock out your gut biotics and then make you feel really bad because your food's not digesting properly. It's not being passed through you properly. And every doctor you talk to will tell you, if you take doxycycline or some other antibiotic, when you're done taking it, take probiotics. Like this is basic medical care that I've never heard of being argued. And the fact that Alberta Health Services is pushing back against this makes me wonder if there's word coming from on high to, just sweep this under the rug and continue the punishment of these men, because as I said in my Newsweek article, they're political prisoners now. These guys have been identified as enemies of the state, and this is the government just like poking them and needling them and punishing them with bureaucracy and denial of the sort of basic rights afforded any other prisoner.
Well, and when Tony did get back to Medicine Hat, he thought maybe since when he got back, because the probiotic was issued in Medicine Hat and it was valid to the middle of August. I did make a comment to AHS saying, if there's an inmate that has diabetes, would the insulin not follow him? And he said, well, of course. And I said, well, of course, and why won't his prescription of the probiotic follow him? So Tony was 2 weeks waiting to see a doctor in Medicine Hat, finally got to see a doctor, and even the doctor had said to Tony that this is wrong, that he should be able to have a probiotic, but there's nothing he can do. The doctor did suggest to Tony, maybe you could take an antidepressant, a laxative, or what was my third? there was another item that he could have. And he said, well, I don't need an antidepressant. Oh, Pepto-Bismol. He says, and Pepto-Bismol is not for my SIBO. And he said, well, maybe you could take an antidepressant for a month. And when it doesn't work, then we can maybe put a prescription in for a probiotic, but we have to try the antidepressant first. And Tony said, I am absolutely not taking the antidepressant.
Given the record that antidepressants and, SSRIs, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, and, opiates and, oxycodone and all these high-powered pharmaceuticals they've been handing out like candy for the last 20 odd years, especially here in the United States, seeing the devastation they've wrought, seeing all of the negative health impacts of people getting hooked on antidepressants, or just the antidepressants making them into like shells of human beings, like giving that to somebody because they're having gut issues and the government actually won't solve the gut issue. Like, this is madness. I can't, Canada prides itself. One of the pillars of the quote unquote Canadian identity is, pretending that we're somehow better than the United States because we have a government financed and guaranteed healthcare system. And then they pull stunts like this and won't even allow a person to have a real simple probiotic. And they would rather push, high powered pharmaceuticals. But I mean, that's just what happened with COVID, right? Everybody go get your vaccine. And if you don't like it or don't take it, you're a bad person. And they went on a scapegoating and mass outgrouping campaign against anybody who was skeptical of that regime and decided to manage their own health. This is nutty. How are the other? Do you have any sense of like how are the other three gentlemen are doing with their health?
Terrible. Jerry Morin actually has some cavities or some teeth that needs to be fixed, and they said, nope, you can have your teeth pulled.
So instead of getting fairly standard dental care of getting like, a cavity filled or a cap or something like that, they're just saying, no, we're just going to pull your teeth.
Yep. And Chris Lysak has bad knees and needs injections into his knees. And the last time he had an injection, he had the wrong injection put into his knees. And Granny had said that his knees were actually worse for a month following. And Jerry also actually has an ulcer in his eye that needs to be dealt with. He's got varicose veins now, and he's finally got compression stockings for them. It's bad. The healthcare system is failing these men.
Right. And I would imagine the diets they're getting in the prisons aren't exactly like the healthiest, most nutrient dense and rich foods either.
No, they were actually served rotten 5-day-old egg salad sandwiches with black lettuce. It was actually documented in court. And the canteen list that Tony has sent me back, there is not one stitch of anything that is actually healthy on that canteen list.
So I imagine it's short on fresh greens, fresh fruits, other fresh vegetables, legumes, decent meat. It's probably quite heavy on starch, processed vegetable oils, seed oils, all that garbage, I'd imagine. Yeah.
Yep. And Tony actually, sometimes he has to buy some junk food to barter with some other inmates to actually get a salad or some actually good food.
Wow. Canada 2023. Not looking so good anymore, are we?
And then my biggest problem is I've spent since July 26th emailing public officials, MLAs, MPs, anybody in government, the health minister, the justice minister, saying we have some human rights violations of the highest levels, and I cannot get a return call back. I've actually heard reports that people are actually getting the phones hung up on them, and anytime the Coutts 4 get brought up, you're totally shut down.
Wow. So I hate to use, we are often accused, those of us in the freedom movement and those of us who pay attention to what the government actually does and would like to have some more control over our own lives, are accused of being conspiracy theorists, which, is a slur that was created by the CIA in the wake of the assassination of JFK, when regular citizens questioned the narrative around his murder. And the conspiracy here is actually on the part of the government. I mean, they are literally conspiring to deny these men justice. Everybody in Canada gets bail, not the Coutts four. People who have killed police officers, people who've driven their cars into crowds of protesters are out on bail. Someone who killed an innocent woman in Toronto on the street a few weeks ago, out on bail. Coutts four, denied bail. I want to take this moment too to remind everybody that all four men, none of them have a criminal record, and none of them have any reason for the government to believe they're violent whatsoever. There's no history of violence, no trouble at all in their lives, no threat to anybody, and being denied bail and essentially tortured with this, solitary confinement, being given crappy food, being denied necessary medical treatment that any other prisoner would get as a matter of course. As I understand it, people who are addicted to drugs, when they get taken into the prison system, are given narcotics to at least help wean them off, if not, prevent them from dying, or going into, some kind of like drawn out regression or other issues. And I'm just flabbergasted that like this is going on and you're getting nowhere. Has there been any like bright light at all from the government, like at any level, local, provincial, or federal, to get any help whatsoever?
I have had one MLA. I did get a reply back saying that she had forwarded my concerns to the health minister. I have not heard anything since. I have had another MP reach out to me. I have been waiting for his phone call back. So basically, no help. And the more I keep digging, the worse it gets. I did have a conversation with Tony when he did get back to the Medicine Hat remand facility. 3 of the gentlemen the inmates that he had known before were all beat up. Their faces were black and blue. And he asked what had happened. And he said one of the inmates was denied his medication, went AWOL, and sent 3 of the other inmates to the hospital.
Wow, that's pretty heavy stuff. Canada prides itself on being, this quote unquote peaceful country where not much else very happens. But inside the prison system, when people are denied their basic care, they kind of act out and things kind of go haywire. And this is all preventable and basically the government's fault for failing to provide for the basic necessities of life to the people that they have locked up.
It's rather disturbing because there's been lots of articles since then that I've pulled that have actually been showing that people have been trying to blow the whistle on these remand facilities for a long time. That there's been health issues. The facilities are filthy. Solitary confinement. There was actually a lawsuit in Alberta here back in, I'll just pull the article here. Alberta court certifies class action lawsuit on solitary confinement. And that was a July 20th, 2022 article. So yeah, Jerry Moran being 70 days so far probably in solitary, and Anthony 40 plus days in solitary for no reason. And when I had actually reached out to one of the lawyers and asking if, and Tony had wrote in one of the health orders to asking, why can't I be in genuine population, or why am I being put in solitary for 22 hours a day? And the facility had wrote back to him and said, we actually have, what does the order say here? As you have numerous separations set up by the courts, we're limited to housing you. So we're just wondering where the documentation is on numerous separation set up by the courts, which makes no sense either.
Yeah, in speaking with a few people back channel, I've used the term Kafkaesque nightmare a few times, and it really sounds like it because, these gentlemen have been charged with a pretty serious crime. It sounds like there's absolutely no evidence other than the memory testimony of two undercover RCMP officers who are like working the crowd at Coutts. And there's no actual recordings. This is all based on, things they wrote down from their memory. So who knows how you interpret who was saying what. A staged photograph of a bunch of guns that are all perfectly legal to own in Canada, and not handled correctly, laid out nice and neat in front of an RCMP car, photo taken the night before the invocation of the Emergencies Act. There's just all of this indication that these guys are being used to keep Trudeau's legitimacy of invoking the Emergencies Act, legitimate, I guess. And there's nothing to it. And every system that is supposed to ensure justice in Canada is served between the government and the citizens it's supposed to rule over is failing or is being turned off so that you actually can't get justice. And like, I don't know what to say or do about this other than keep talking about it. And I'm almost speechless that this is going on in Canada in 2023.
Last week, actually, one of the four accused, had reached out to Granny because one of the inmates in the Lethbridge facility was having health issues, heart issues, and couldn't get any help. So finally, Granny got the public to flood the remand center, the correctional facility, phone lines. And this gentleman finally got help after the phone lines were flooded.
So maybe that's something listeners to this show should do, is carry on, making phone calls, writing to MLAs, sending emails. We can't let their stonewalling go unnoticed. We have to just keep throwing our voices at them and saying like, this is out of order, this is wrong. And you, our representatives of the state who are charged with doing the right thing and administering to our concerns, have to do it. And I guess we just have to keep yelling at them. In the notes, anybody that's listening to this in the show notes, I'm going to provide phone numbers, emails, Alberta Health Services, Give, Send, Go for Margaret for the boys. You'll have all kinds of ways to write to the people involved here, and then write letters to the men to help keep their spirits up. Because can you imagine being separated from your family for this long? I got a call from Chris Lysak last Thursday afternoon, and he told me like a pretty wicked story about how, I can't remember what news media organization showed up at his kid's mother's father's house, who's hard of hearing. No other adults were around. They kind of let themselves into the house and tried to interview his 11-year-old daughter with nobody present. And what the treatment these guys are getting at the hands of the media is disgusting, at the hands of the government is disgusting. And we need to do something about this. Do you have any other advice or comments, Nikki?
Well, as far as I can see, these politicians have forgot we don't work for them, they work for us. And so, you know what, I think we need to flood the phone lines of the health minister, the justice minister, Danielle Smith's office. Keep flooding these lines, because any MLAs, MPs, this is inhumane and unconstitutional and absolutely the most sickening thing people could ever even imagine is happening to these men. And it's up to we the people to stop this.
Right. And for the heinous crime of protesting the COVID regime imposed on us by Justin Trudeau that nobody asked for, when your charter rights have been clearly taken away, when you're subject to 2 years of basically psychological terror campaign by the government and the media, and you stand up and say enough's enough, and what do? They arrest you, accuse you of bogus crimes, throw you in jail, and then keep you there for a year and a half. Like this is some Banana Republic authoritarian tyrant nonsense. Like this should not be Canada in 2023, but unfortunately it is. So I would encourage everybody, again, check out the show notes. If you're listening via my Substack, it'll all be there on all my podcatchers. I'll have all of this information that Nikki's going to share with me. And you guys should really do your level best to not shut up about this, because there's 4 innocent men in remand, being treated horribly and in many ways tortured, and it has to stop.
It's actually sick and disgusting. You know, when Tony's so sick, he did make a comment to me, I'm not sure if I'm going to make it home alive, because he can't get a proper diet. Not eating, and there's some days he can't even eat because he doesn't even get good food to eat, because it actually just makes him sicker. I actually did ask AHS when I called them, so what happens, who's accountable if somebody dies or somebody's sick? And I got the comment of, I don't know.
Wow. Yeah. Well, I mean, that only follows our society is currently managed by the worst ruling class in human history, and that filters down to all levels, including provincial. These people are disgusting, and they're incompetent, and they're venal, and they're more worried about their jobs than they are about actually doing their jobs or serving the people that they are tasked to serve, on our taxpayer dime. And everything I've heard about what's going on with these guys, like, it makes me ill too. And I mean, that's why I'm here. I'm happy you came to speak with me, and any way I can help, including blasting this out on my podcast. Anybody that's listening to this that's in Alberta or in Canada or cares or has the time or has a couple of bucks to spare, please, help these guys out. We have political prisoners being tortured in Canada in year of our Lord 2023, and anything you can do to help.
Yeah, this is unconstitutional. It's sick. It's inhumane. It's absolutely disgusting that this would even actually happen in this country. And we've allowed it in third world countries, and here it is. So we better not allow it. So it's time that the people step up and we stop this and start phoning in. And because at any time this could be anybody else. And from what I'm finding, there are many more just like this.
Yeah, I've heard that there's actually quite a few various political prisoners in various positions around Canada. I'm going to dig into that myself. But in the meantime, Nikki Thom, thank you very much for standing up for your friend, for standing up for the men, for standing up for Canada, and for being a decent human being and having some principles, morals, and some concern for your fellow citizens. In the last few years, the COVID crisis showed us that many of our fellow citizens have forgotten these things and have forgotten to do the right thing. Maybe through their own fault, maybe through not correctly standing up against the fear imposed on us by COVID and by the government. But what you're doing here is great, and I want to thank you very much for your time and for all the efforts you've put into this. Well,
thank you, Gord. Appreciate getting the word out, because people need to know about these men and need to know about how they're being treated, and it's up to we the people to fix this problem.
Yeah, amen to that. All right. Thank you very much, Nikki.
Thanks, Gord. Appreciate it.